Welcome to the Bible Forum. It is May 24, 2020, day before Memorial Day. You have signed up to receive our weekly rundown of topics. This week, if you were on that list, you got the topics without any indication as to what the email was about, and you got a wrong date. That's because I'm old and I got a lot of stuff going on. And I used last week's as a format and I forgot to change all that stuff. But I trust that you're able to figure all that out. If you want that email, it's a once a week email. It's sent out every Saturday. Today was Sunday, got carried away. To alert you of the topics of the week. You need to let me know. Just send me your email address. I'll put you on the list. You get that email, you get nothing else from me. I don't send out stuff. I don't do any of that sort of thing. I did have at least one person complain because they liked the other format. More information. I don't learn anything. I'll see. Okay, well, it costs money. That's one of the problems that we have. I got to pay for that. I don't have to pay to send you an email. So, again, no other email is sent. That's all you get. I have made a note to self. Use correct date on mailings. I'd like to say it was a test to see if you were paying attention, but it really wasn't. It was just one of those things. A lot of interesting things have occurred in the week as we have been not paying a whole lot of attention. I wanted to share some of those things. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic is still hot to trot out here, and we're learning that it's very costly. And because it's costly, then Congress is working, or at least some aspects of it are trying to figure out how to pay for this. 29 House Democrats recently signed a letter to both the Democrat chairman and the ranking Republican on the House Armed Services Committee, asking them to authorize spending below the $730 billion in this year's military budget. It read in part, quote, Congress must remain focused on responding to the coronavirus pandemic and distributing needed aid domestically. It also noted that annual defense spending has increased by more than $100 billion, or nearly 20% over the past 3 years. And that right now, it's the coronavirus who is our greatest adversary. So they want to go in and tap in to the defense budget and send that over there. Currently, the U.S. debt is somewhere near $25 trillion. We have an annual income, an annual revenue stream of about $3.6 trillion. Doesn't take a financial genius to figure out that we're in a deficit situation. The experts tell us that all of this means that every American owes about $77,000 today. That will be a different number next week. But that amount is growing. It grows every minute as Congress and the President keep throwing money at the effects of this coronavirus. One of the things they're doing, if you have not noticed or gotten yours yet, is to sending you a little credit card. This was sent to my wife and I. It is actually a debit card. And on this debit card is money. And you can spend it just like you can on any credit card, or you can have it deposited in your checking account or whatever you choose to do. But this is one of the reasons the budget is going up. This particular thing is about $2,400. And it's just because people are out of work, because this is a tough time, doctor bills, things like that. And if they shut the government down, you can't work. They have a responsibility. A perspective here. Experts tell us that all of this debt rivals the dot-com and subprime crises of 2009. But all of it together is still significantly less than 1/4 the amount of debt we incurred at that time. Now, all of this are numbers I can't comprehend. And because we can't comprehend them, we tend to pay them no mind. We have experts to worry about all this and to do whatever it takes to alter our financial trajectory. We apparently carry $2.8 billion in debt on a regular basis. Under Trump, that debt has increased to $3.2 billion. And it appears it's now going to increase even more, which means, who knows? With Trump at the helm, almost anything is likely. He's a money man, and he has experience with debt. Will we see interest rates of 18% again as we did in the 1980s? Some of you were alive then and you understood that. I had a man in my church that borrowed money to build a house or to buy a house. His mortgage interest was over 15%. Mortgages of 12 to 15 were commonplace. Car loans had much higher rates than they do today. That reality was caused by something referred to as the subprime crash. I don't understand all of it, but it drove the interest rates up all over the world. It slowed our progress. But having lived through that time period, it didn't change our lifestyles all that much, except for those who were living off credit or had overextended in terms of borrowed money at the wrong time. Today, Americans tend to live off those credit cards. We're going to get another lesson in economics over the next couple of years. Donald Trump is going to get reelected as president, and I fully expect that in the next 4 years he will tackle our debt. He hasn't done that these first 4 years. He's run it up. But I am confident that before we get to the end of the next 4 years, we'll be out of debt or down to a normal plateau. Not that any of that's going to matter all that much. People are not going to change. They're going to still want to blame this president for everything since, the Second World War. But expect the economy to slow down next year. To see your wish list get smaller, at least for a while. But trust me when I tell you, you'll survive it. Yeah, you really will. We always have. A doctor who advised President Barack Obama justified Trump's taking the drug Chloroquine as a precaution. On Monday, Dr. Ronnie Jackson told Fox News' Shannon Bream that the president is doing the smart thing by protecting himself. He said Pelosi, quote, should stick to her full-time job, which is driving this country into the ground, end of quote, and leave medical advice to the experts. Jackson was appointed as the physician to the president in 2006 under George W. Bush. He was retained by President Obama and now by President Trump. He said that Americans should have no issue with Trump taking the drug prophylactically because he is the leader of the free world. Jackson added that Trump is driven around in an armored car and is the most protected man in the world, so it makes perfect sense to take the drug. It's the responsible thing to do right now, if you're a president, he said. We got new statistics this week, or at least recently, from New York City's health department. That shows the coronavirus pandemic is hitting neighborhoods with high poverty levels harder than wealthier neighborhoods. And in response to that information, there was a collective duh all around the country. According to statistics, neighborhoods with high poverty rates have seen more confirmed coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. In neighborhoods with a very high population of community living below the poverty level, that's classified as 30% or higher, the death rate from COVID-19 is 232 persons per 100,000. In the wealthier neighborhoods, that number drops to 99 per 100,000. The hospitalization rate is 714 per 100,000 versus 330 per 100,000 in the upscale neighborhoods. And the case rate is 2,497 per 100,000 versus 1,696 per 100,000 in the upscale neighborhoods. So what does poverty have to do with this disease? Are poor people simply more susceptible? That factor doesn't make a lot of sense unless we're talking about overall physical conditioning. Then the question becomes, why? Why would these folks be less healthy? Our government spends billions of dollars every year to provide these people food, shelter, and medical help. Are we not doing enough? Is it not being distributed properly? Are those being paid to care for these people not doing their job? Or do the chronically poor simply not avail themselves of the benefits? And the answer to these questions is a resounding yes. Not availing themselves of the benefits is part of their makeup. It's one of the reasons they're poor. There is no reason in America why poor people must stay poor. When they do, the reasons go beyond food and shelter and medical care. But you knew that, didn't you? Just wonders you, when are the liberals going to get it? 2 astronauts will end a 9-year launch drought for NASA on Wednesday of this week. It'll be the first time a private company, rather than a national government, sends astronauts into orbit. NASA test pilots Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken are scheduled to blast off on Wednesday afternoon on top of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket bound for the International Space Station. That is not a government rocket. It'll be the first time. They use the same pad where Atlantis closed out the shuttle program in 2011, the last home launch for NASA astronauts. They still don't know how long they'll spend at the space station, anywhere between 1 and 4 months. Only one American is up there right now. It's astronaut Chris Cassidy. And I'm sure he could use both a hand and some company. Hurley said he got an email from Cassidy on Tuesday night in which he wrote that, quote, "He's looking forward to seeing your ugly mugs on board," end of quote. NASA's Commercial Crew program has been years in the making. Boeing, the competing company, isn't expected to launch its first astronauts until next year. The University of California regrets unanimously voting last Thursday to suspend SAT and ACT testing requirements through 2024, and also to eliminate them altogether for California students by 2025. Why? Well, they're doing all of this because they believe the tests are unfair. They believe the tests discriminate against disadvantaged students. And that being so, they do not provide a useful tool in evaluating college applicants. Does this make sense to you? Well, it makes sense to these folks. Someone or someones took exception to a church meeting during the shutdown related to coronavirus. In order to show their feelings, they blew up the church, not when anybody was in it. The First Pentecostal Church of Holly Springs was vandalized, which caused an explosion to the rear of the facility. One message spray painted on the church property read, "I'll bet you'll stay home now, you hypocrites." Can't spell the word hypocrites. They spelled it Hypokrits. Stephen Crampton, an attorney for the church, told a local TV outlet Thursday that the unknown vandal or vandals spray painted the church and then set it on fire. There was a major explosion in the back of the church that blew out the front. Crampton also said he believed the church was targeted for being outspoken and somewhat firm about seeking to protect their constitutional rights by refusing to close during the pandemic. And who did this unauthorized meeting affect? Well, it only affected those who attended. It didn't have any impact on the community at all. Had no impact on the bomber or bombers. With less than 5% of the population infected with this particular virus, what will we do when something serious comes along? Something really serious. It appears infectious diseases like the flu are impacting more and more people every year. But it also seems that we have more and more people on the planet every year. 2 years ago, flu killed somewhere near 40,000 people in this country. I take that back. 3 years ago. 2 years ago, the experts believe that number was closer to 80,000. That's because all the numbers are not in yet. This year, they're anticipating over 100,000. So the population of this country increases every year. The growth tends to be in cities where people live very close to one another. Our promiscuous and irresponsible lifestyles tend to create weaknesses in both mind and body. Do you not see where all this is leading? There has been an in-depth academic study recently that confirms what Judicial Watch and others have thought all along. First of all, that a large number of non-citizens cast ballots in U.S. elections. And secondly, that it is possible illegal votes were responsible for President Obama's 2008 victory. The reality here, non-citizens tend to favor Democrats, and Obama won more than 80% of the votes of non-citizens in the 2008 sample gathered by the Cooperative Congressional Election Study, which is a large-scale academic survey project operated by teams of researchers from across the country. In fact, enough ineligible voters cast ballots in 2008 to conceivably account for Democrat victories in a few close elections. The CCES is an esteemed and highly respected operation that recently published shocking information gathered from big social science survey data sets supporting Judicial Watch's work in this particular area. In 2012, Judicial Watch launched the Election Integrity Project, a widespread legal campaign to clean up voter registration rolls and support election integrity measures across the country. These investigations immediately uncovered data that proved voter rolls in a number of states, including Mississippi, Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, Texas, Florida, California, and Colorado. That it contained the names of individuals who are ineligible to vote. Now the CCES confirms that specifically large numbers of foreign nationals vote in U.S. elections. The participation was large enough to plausibly account for Democrat victories in a few close elections, according to a mainstream newspaper article written by two of the political science college professors that conducted the study. They wrote, quote, "Non-citizen votes could have given Senate Democrats the pivotal 60th vote needed to overcome filibusters in order to pass health care reform and other Obama administration priorities in the 111th Congress." Senator Al Franken, who's a liberal Democrat in Minnesota, won election in 2008 with a victory margin of just 312 votes. You might have remembered the mess when that happened. A mere 0.65% of Minnesota non-citizens could have accounted for that margin. It's also possible that non-citizen votes were responsible for Obama's 2008 victory in North Carolina. Obama won the state by 14,177 votes. So a turnout by only 5% of North Carolina's adult non-citizens would have provided this victory margin. Non-citizens tend to favor Democrats, and Obama won more than 80% of the votes of non-citizens in the 2008 sample gathered by the Cooperative Congressional Elections Study, a large-scale academic survey project operated by teams of researchers from across the country. In fact, these researchers found enough ineligible voters cast ballots in 2008 to conceivably account for many Democrat victories in the closer elections. Most non-citizens don't register, let alone vote. But enough do that their participation can change the outcome of very close races. And that, according to the professors who did the study. House Democrats last week voted for Speaker Nancy Pelosi's Coronavirus bill that forces Americans to fund abortions and the Planned Parenthood abortion business. You might ask, what does a coronavirus flu bill have to do with abortions and Planned Parenthood? Well, this is the third time that Pelosi has tried to make the American people pay for her abortion agenda instead of providing relief for those adversely affected by COVID-19. It has absolutely nothing to do with the COVID outbreak, but it does help pro-abortion Democrats in the 2020 election. Her proposal includes the removal of safeguards in the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, that prevents taxpayer money from bailing out the billion-dollar abortion giant Planned Parenthood. Apparently, this bill would pass along taxpayer dollars to the Planned Parenthood abortion business from the hundreds of millions of dollars that states would receive. The bill also funds abortions directly with taxpayer dollars, allowing federal tax dollars to pay for abortions through subsidized health care plans. Kind of a backdoor situation. And at the state and local level, it authorizes over $900 billion, with a B, in open-ended funding, so nothing would prevent this money from further subsidizing the abortion industry. Billy Valentine of the Susan B. Anthony list condemned Pelosi and the Democrats for pushing their abortion agenda on America. Americans are hurting right now, they wrote, and Pelosi is trying to exploit a pandemic to enable the killing of innocent babies in the womb, and then have you, the taxpayer, foot the bill. Worst of all, she's named her pro-abortion bill the HEROES Act. There's nothing heroic about the destruction of innocent life. With the last bill, the Senate ultimately passed what is called a clean bill to provide funding to combat the coronavirus that contains language preventing the funds from being used to pay for abortions. Now lawmakers will have to stop Pelosi once again. Nancy Pelosi has a long history of promoting abortion, and her first act after becoming Speaker in 2019 was pushing legislation to use tax money for abortions. We are pleased to have a president who probably is not going to go along with this, probably is going to veto the whole thing. That's the potpourri of news that flooded our wavelengths this week. When we come back, I want to talk to you about General Flynn. Stay tuned.